my perception was you need to have this forceful personality to move an organization, particularly an organization of 100, 200,000 people. But it's very easy for it to cross the line into something very dark and dysfunctional too.
I love that you point that out, because I think that's where a lot of times we make the ego bad. The ego is not bad. It's actually what gets us our success. It's what gets us to the finish line. It's what makes us a good person. When we overuse it and it's not intentional, then the ego unconsciously protects us, right? And so the ego was designed when we were children, like 2 and 3 years old, starting at life situations. So, life's crises and traumas and, moves and being bullied or having a tough teacher or having strict parents, like whatever your story is, it starts to build our ego. And we either learn it's safe if I'm quiet and I'm liked. It's safe if I, am a good athlete. It's safe if I get straight A's and I'm the smartest kid in the class, whatever the story is. And so we start to build our identity through this ego as a child. Now, when you think of it, right, a child is super egotistical. It's all about me. And until they're about 4, they don't even learn the word we, right? And so everything is I, me. And then we get into our teens and we almost start getting punished for the I mentality, because like, oh, wow, it's not just about me and everybody's letting me know that right now. And this really sucks. And then you get into your 20s and now you're a young adult and you're starting your careers, excuse me, and you're starting to have relationships. And now you really learn like, ooh, if I don't have people at the finish line with me, I'm kind of losing. But we don't really have an intentional thought around that. We just know it's uncomfortable when, we lose people or we get fired or we get laid off or we have confrontation. That sucks. But usually it's an ego-driven reason for why we're having that in our world, right? And so as you start getting further and further into leadership, if you don't learn about that ego, you absolutely need it. And majority, I would say, majority leaders majority humans have 1 to 2 dominant egos. And usually you have some form of, protector, controller if you are in a leadership role. Usually more of the controller and a complier or a protector to balance it out. But the reality is you have to have some control because it's results oriented. You cannot have a success. You cannot climb a corporate ladder. You cannot build a career if you don't have ambition, if you don't have drive, if you don't have passion, right? And so that is the strength of the controller. With that being said, even someone that has a dominant complier ego can be very driven by their controller ego. So for example, someone who's motivated by being liked, they might have started their career of just, people please, you find the leader that's going to promote you, you just do everything, you workaholic at all night hours and you get people going and you do everything people ask you to do, even if you're burning yourself out just to get recognized, right? But your motivator is to be the best, to win in order for people to like me, in order for me to get
recognition.
Right. And so again, there's a motivator for everything. Even if your dominant ego is not a controller, you can still have controller in you in order to get to that finish line.
That's really interesting. My thought on this that I came to after seeing literally hundreds of different CEOs in different industries around the world operate is that it's like you said, Christy, we all have an ego. It's not, when you tell someone don't be egotistical or don't have an ego.
Curb your ego.
That's like saying that's like, well, no, what I was going to say is curbing is different though. Because that's I think that's the key. I think that the most successful leaders I've seen are not ones who have no ego. They're ones who have learned to ride their ego instead of letting their ego ride them. So they use it in an intentional way that they are in control of their ego rather than being unconsciously controlled by their ego.
That's what I want to pick out, because you started off, Christy, saying it's the unconscious mind. And that's the flaw, isn't it? Because if you allow your ego unconsciously to run wild in its predominant main factor, that's where you get the problems. But if you can understand that, and I think that's why it was great asking these questions, because I've learned so much about these 3 domains of egotism that people aren't aware of it. And if you become, it's like everything, if you become aware of it, you then know how and when to apply it, when, as Bryce said, when to temper it, when to push harder. and unleash those different variations of the ego you have within, because you all have it. Can't get rid of it. It's a natural internal capability that we all have. And it's not a bad thing. And I think we've got to go away from this stigma of ego is bad. I'm fed up of reading HBR reviews with the big guy in a suit and the cockerel going, ego is bad for leadership. It's not. It's got to be understood. And the lack of understanding and thinking about it and then managed. Yeah. How do you see people manage?
I want to push back on that a little bit, actually, because I do think that ego can be very bad. I think it...
Well, absolutely. An overused ego is detrimental to success, to relationships, to happiness, to all of it. Absolutely.
Exactly. But you can't, but the idea that you're going to eliminate it, that it's a switch that you're going to have, that you have a choice to turn on or off, is where the problem, I think, lies.